Remember, right? One is solid solution strengthening, one is precipitation strengthening, one is dislocation. So I have written a question: what happened at high temperature? Elevated temperature means high temperature. That means if we take our metallic materials to higher temperature, or in other way I can say, if application temperature is very high, what happens to the metallic materials? Right. The most easy part is the yield strength decreases with increasing in the temperature. That is the first thing happens. That means if you take the material to a high temperature, yield strength will go down. Right? So that's why we can do what? We can measure the yield strength at higher temperature or at the application temperature. Suppose your application temperature is room temperature, then there is no problem, right? But if your application temperature is high temperature and you have measured the strength at low temperature, room temperature, so there will be a problem, right? Because the yield strength will go down if the temperature will more and more and more. So that is one of the problems. So yield strength decreases with increasing in the temperature. That is the first part. If yield strength decreases, that means the ductility will increase, but strength will decrease. Obviously, material will start yielding at a low stress, or at low load. Obviously, fine. And second problem occurs is creep. I told. Creep is a plastic deformation mechanism. If you remember the different mechanism of plastic deformation, remember that? Sleeve, twinning, one is creep, one is martensitic transformation, if you remember, right? Creep is very interesting. Creep, if your material will fail by creep, then you don't have any idea how your material failed, because the load you have given was low and it is constant, right? The load is constant and low, and the stress acting on the material is below yield strength, but still the material will fail, right? See how a ductile material fails basically. First of all, if your stress will be above yield strength, what will happen? Material will first deform plastically. After a long time, it will fail at the end. So it has to be first deform plastically, right? There will be a reduction in the thickness or the cross-sectional area, and finally it will fail. Necking will form and it will fail, right? But the stress acting on the material is below yield strength, but still the material is getting failed, and that is by creep. Why this happens? Because this is due to high temperature. If your application temperature is very high, then creep mechanism will start in the material. But it will take some time. It doesn't mean within 1 hour or within 10 days or within 1 year it will fail. It may take 10 years, 12 years, 30 years, it depends. But the material will fail. So basically the definition of creep is it is a time temperature deformation. Time is enough, temperature is also there. That means high temperature is available. Right? That's why it is simply called time temperature deformation. This deformation is which kind of deformation? Plastic or elastic? Plastic, right? There is a permanent deformation will be there, right? And what kind of mechanism involved? Basically diffusion happens. As I told, if you go to a high temperature, the number of vacancy will be increased, because number of vacancy concentration is proportional to temperature. Higher is the temperature, higher is the number of vacancies. If more vacancy will be there, they will move, and if vacancy moves, atoms will move. Vacancy and atom movement will be just opposite always. Where vacancy will go, atom will come out from that position, or when atom will go, vacancy will be coming out. Simple things, right? So you understand, at higher temperature what happens? Diffusion starts. You understand my first point is, I told what? At high temperature yield strength decreases, right? Second point I told what? Can anybody tell me how yield strength decreases? Because the mobility of dislocation will be higher at high temperature. If you remember, I show you the graph, twinning and slip graph, if you remember. A video I have shown you, right? If temperature will be higher, dislocation moment will be easy, right? Or another interesting point is, at high temperature, new slip system also get activated. New slip system also get activated. So you understood. There was a question, if you remember, in the mid semester, why HCP is somewhat stronger, but why FCC materials are ductile. You remember that? Why? Anybody remember? Why FCC is more ductile than HCP materials? Because of slip system numbers. Very good. FCC have more number of slip system, 12, but HCP has only 3, right? More slip system means more number of closed pack plane, closed pack directions will be available, where dislocation basically moves. So dislocation will easily move, right? But in HCP only 3 number of slip systems are there. So slip will be restricted, or dislocation movement will be restricted in certain planes only, certain directions. So that's why. So the interesting part is, sometimes what happen, if number of slip system is 12, for example, but if you take the material to a high temperature, new slip system will get activated. Number of slip system will increase. So obviously, slip will be again easy. Plastic deformation will be easy, right? You understand my point? So this is the third point. Second point, diffusion will start. You have to remember, diffusion is directly proportional to temperature. Higher is the temperature, higher is the rate of diffusion. You are studying this mass transfer, right? So mass transfer also increases with increasing the temperature. You understood my point? Fine. These are movement of atoms. So that is also a mass flow. Diffusion. You have studied about this Fick's first law, second law, I think. No? Fick's law, sir, I told you this one. In transport phenomenon. Okay, sir, we haven't started yet. No. Anyway. Okay. So these are the things. Another thing is the phase transformation may happen. You remember? Phase transformation in solid. Phase transformation in solid means what? Can you tell me what is the meaning of phase transformation in solid? You? What it means, simply? Yeah. Phase transformation means there will be change in crystal structure, right, with temperature, right? Material is same, but a new crystal structure will come out due to change in the temperature. That is called phase change or phase transformation. Okay, but that is, the material is remain in solid state. That's why it is solid state phase transformation. Right, austenite become martensite. Austenite is FCC, martensite is BCT. So there is a change in crystal structure, but material is same steel. Right? FCC becomes, austenite becomes ferrite. Austenite is FCC, ferrite is BCC. But they are in solid state, material is steel, same steel. Right? So similarly, that means with increasing in the temperature, the phase transformation may happen. And if the phase is ductile, the new phase which come out will be ductile. Material will fail also. You understand my point? So these are the things. So phase transformation may happen at also high temperature. Okay? And the main problem with, okay, you have attended the precipitation strengthening, right? We can have small precipitates, we can have big precipitates. I also have told you what happens when dislocation interact with the precipitate, right? You have seen the shearing of precipitate and bowing of precipitate, right? Okay, so the problem is what? And anybody remember which precipitate is good? Small size precipitate or big size? Small size is always good, right? Because you can have lot of precipitates. If the precipitate size is small, you can have lot of precipitate in a single material. And lot of precipitate means lot of obstacles. Dislocation will come and stop in front of obstacles, right? But if you have big precipitate, number of precipitate will be small. Obviously, because volume fraction is same. Same precipitate becomes small or big at the end, right? If bigger precipitate will be there, then less number of precipitate will be there, right? So distance between the dislocation and precipitate will be more also, and dislocation can easily move in between the precipitate, obviously, right? So small precipitate are always good. That means my point is now, what happened to the precipitate when you are going to a high temperature? Basically, the point is what? The precipitation strengthening is a very good strengthening. It will provide you very high strength, right? But if the application temperature is very high, what will happen to the precipitate? Can anybody guess what happens to the precipitate size? It will become bigger because of diffusion again, right? So precipitate, that is called precipitation coarsening or coarsening of precipitate. Precipitate become coarser if you put the material at high temperature and if you give sufficient time. That means initially you have small precipitate, but the application temperature is very high. So with time, this precipitate will grow bigger and bigger. So what will happen? If the precipitate become coarser, what will happen? The strength will automatically reduce with time. This phenomenon is called precipitation coarsening or coarsening of precipitate. Like grain become coarser, similarly precipitate also become coarser with time if temperature will be high, right? And suppose your temperature is very high, what may happen? This precipitate may get soluble into the matrix, right? If you remember, we have two phases, one is matrix, one is precipitate. Precipitate are second phase, matrix is the primary phase. You understood my point? You remember now in the previous class I have shown you, right? So precipitate may get soluble in the matrix. So what will happen? Strength will go down. If you compare solid solution strengthening and precipitation strengthening will give you very high strength, but solid solution strengthening will not give you very high strength, right? If the precipitate becomes soluble in the matrix, so what kind of strengthening will be there? Solid solution strengthening, it becomes a solid solution, everything becomes soluble, single phase. But if precipitate will be there with matrix, then your strengthening will be very high. So you can write one point I told, coarsening of the precipitate may take place at high temperature. One is precipitate may also get soluble in the matrix. So these are the things which will happen at a high temperature, right? One I told, diffusion will happen, or rate of diffusion will increase. One is I told precipitation coarsening. One is called I told that is you may have phase transformation, and new slip system may also get activated. So these are the points. Fine. And yield strength will also decrease. So these are the, that means you have to select a material which can provide high strength at high temperature, right? So let me clear you one point. It doesn't mean we are not using precipitation strengthening materials. We are using precipitation strengthening materials at high temperature. But problem will be this, the precipitate may become coarser with time. Suppose you want to put your material for 50 years without any failure, but problem will be what? After maybe 10 years or 20 years, your precipitate become coarser, then it will fail. You try to keep it for 50 years, but within 20 years it may fail, or within 10 years it may fail. The main reason is due to coarsening of the precipitate, right? If the precipitate become coarser, the strength will reduce and material will become ductile and it will fail at the end. Fine. So there is a solution to this. So before moving into the solution, let me tell you how precipitation coarsening happen, or what is the mechanism behind the precipitation coarsening. That is called, you can write, Ostwald rising. Ostwald rising. This is a very good concept. Concept of Ostwald rising. This will give you coarsening. Coarsening of particles. Precipitate are also particles. Precipitation coarsening or coarsening of precipitate. Right? So let me give a real situation. Just a story. The largest mammal or largest animal in earth is what? Blue whales, right? So in the ocean or in the sea, whale will be there. So what happens? Suppose initially the whale like it get bath, it take bath for example. It is a small size. Then what it happens? It started eating small fish. With time it will become bigger and bigger. With age, same thing happens. Just imagine you have a condition where you have small precipitates and you have bigger precipitates. So what will happen? The situation will be the bigger precipitate will consume the smaller precipitate and bigger precipitate size will become bigger and bigger. So with time what will happen at the end? Finally the small precipitate will go, disappear. Only you will having bigger precipitates. You understood? So that is Ostwald rising. I can show you. Suppose this is the material. This is the material, fine. So you have This is what? Small precipitate, and this is big. Fine. So this is also big. You can have medium size precipitate, and these are small. What happens basically? Two things happen. So at high temperature diffusion starts. Diffusion starts. So what happens? This will be engulfed by this one. This big precipitate will engulf the small precipitate. This will engulf the small precipitate. And this is smaller and this is bigger. So this will engulf this one. Right? This will be engulfed by this one. And this is small, this is big. So this will be engulfed by this one, this will be engulfed by this one, right? And suppose you understand what is happening? The bigger precipitate is engulfing the smaller precipitate. And what will happen at the result? If you look finally, this blue. Alright. So this will become, and this one will become like, and this one may become this one. Okay, you understand what? Now you see what is happening. Number of precipitate is decreasing, right? Due to this, the number of precipitate is decreasing, but size of the precipitate is increasing. Similarly, what will happen at the end? This will be this bigger will engulf this one. This may goes to this one. This may goes to this one. Fine. So finally, what will happen at the end? Blue. Only two precipitate now. They are big. So if that means the material is at high temperature and you are giving sufficient time, this phenomenon will happen in the materials. So the question is how it happens basically. The thing is, smaller precipitates means they have high surface area, right? Smaller is the size, surface area is more always. Bigger is the size, surface area is less, right? So if surface area is more, energy also become more, right? More energy, more surface. So atoms always move from high energy region to low energy region. So what happens? Basically in the real situation, this smaller precipitate will get soluble in the matrix. So this is called matrix. You understand my point? You have two phases, matrix and precipitate. So in the matrix, smaller precipitate will get soluble. And what happens? Again it will get reprecipitate on the bigger precipitate. So solubility and reprecipitation will happen. Smaller precipitate will get soluble in the matrix and reprecipitate on the bigger precipitate. So this is a diffusion mechanism, right? From matrix the atom is moving toward the bigger precipitates. It is okay? So similarly this will happen, continue, and finally you will end up with only big size precipitates. All the small precipitates will go away. Last one you can see, suppose this is big, suppose this is small, okay, anyways, suppose this is small and this is big. It will engulf this one if you give sufficient time. I am showing you just a cartoon diagram. It doesn't mean only 5 to 10 precipitates. It may be of 1000 or maybe million number of precipitates will be there in the middle. Million number. Just this is a sketch. So what is happening? Smaller precipitate. Smaller precipitate will disappear and bigger precipitate will become bigger. Become more big. Which time? This is your time axis. Which time? This concept is Ostwald ripening. Ripening means it is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. The scientist name was Ostwald ripening. We have seen this mechanism first. That's why the name is Ostwald ripening. But the mechanism behind it is simply the diffusion mechanism. At high temperature diffusion occurs, atoms move from one location to another location. So reprecipitation is happening means atom is moving from one location to another location. Right? And we understand smaller precipitate is good, but bigger precipitate is not good. So strength will decrease with time, obviously because of this coarsening of precipitate. So result is what? The strength will go down due to coarsening of the precipitates. Fine. Okay. So now, that means if we are using precipitation strengthening materials, then we have to choose a particular time and particular temperature only. Suppose this is happening at 1000 degrees centigrade quickly. So we do not have to use this material at 1000 degrees centigrade. We can use this material at 800, 700 or 600. That is okay, no problem. But the question is, if our application temperature is suppose 1200 degrees centigrade, so what can be done? We cannot use this kind of materials. It will become coarsenate easily with time. So there is a solution. So solution is what I told. Dispersion strengthening. Then we have to go for dispersion strengthening. Dispersion strengthening. Dispersion strengthening instead of precipitation strengthening. So this is the final strengthening mechanism. So that means we are using dispersion strengthening because this precipitate will not grow. Or actually these are not precipitates, these are particles actually. So precipitate is a particle, this is also a particle, dispersed soil. Those are called dispersed soil. So dispersed particles do not grow with time. Solution is done, right? So what are these dispersed soil? Obviously, so dispersed soils are basically we are using TiO2 or we can use yttria, YO2. This is titanium dioxide. Sometimes we use alumina also, Al2O3, alumina. So you understand what are these? Who can answer? These are oxides basically, very good. These are oxides, right? Or what are precipitates, you remember? Example of precipitates, they are carbides, yes. Carbides, then intermetallics, nitrides, carbonitrates, right? But these are not carbides, nitrides, carbonitrates or intermetallics. These are oxides. And oxides are not basically soluble in the matrix. Matrix means metallic phase. You understand my point? But these are oxides, so they will be not soluble. If they will be not soluble, they will not grow. As I told, smaller precipitate dissolve and reprecipitate on the bigger precipitate. So they grow with time. So these oxides, oxides will not grow with time. If you have given 10 nanometer particles, they will remain 10 nanometer particles for a long period of time. So they will provide strength, no problem. The strength will not get reduced with time because they do not become coarser, right? And these oxides also have high melting point. If you want, you can check it. Melting point of TiO2, YO2, Al2O3. The melting point of Al2O3 is nearly 2100 degrees centigrade. Can you imagine? So they will not get soluble also. Our application temperature is, for example, 1200 degrees centigrade. So melting point is 2100. It will not become soluble. It will not become melt, right? So TiO2 and YO2 also have high. But the thing is what? These are foreign particles introduced intentionally. Okay, introduced into the alloy. These particles are intentionally intentionally introduced into the materials. That means, suppose I have a steel, I want dispersion strengthening. So what I will choose? I will choose YO2 and I mix with my steel, right? And it will become dispersion strengthening materials. It is okay? Fine. But in case of precipitation strengthening, those are foreign particles. No, they are inherent. Already they are in the materials already. I show you now, in the last class I show you how precipitate come out. There is a heat treatment we do. Solutionizing and aging. I have given you an example of aluminum alloy, aluminum copper alloy, right? But we do not need any kind of heat treatment for this also. We are intentionally adding some foreign particles which will remain as foreign particles without any solubility or without any coarsening. But they provide strengthening. So dislocation will come and stop in front of this dispersion. Is okay? You understand my point? Fine. So these are intentionally added. These are foreign particles completely. But precipitates are not foreign particles. They are already present in the matrix, but due to this heat treatment, they are coming out and sitting on the matrix. Anywhere on the grain boundary, maybe inside the grain, anywhere it may sit. But these dispersoids are uniformly distributed always. That is another interesting point. Dispersoids are always uniformly distributed in the materials. But precipitates are not always uniformly distributed. Sometimes they are preferentially on the grain boundaries. Can anybody guess why grain boundaries? Why precipitates formation is basically along grain boundaries? You know the answer, I know.
Density.
Due to?
Density.
Density, no. Due to high energy region. Grain boundaries are high energy region. You understand my point? So where energy is already available, something may form easily. So precipitation will be easy if they form along the grain boundaries because energy is already available. Right? You understand my point? And that is if precipitates will preferentially form along the grain boundaries, that is not good actually. You have to remember, precipitates is forming, it should form everywhere inside the grain. It should not preferentially form along the grain boundaries, but automatically it forms along the grain boundaries because of high energy of the grain boundary. But that is not good. Because once crack will initiate along the grain boundaries, it will easily propagate along the grain boundaries and material will fail. Just imagine a situation. Precipitate is hard and brittle, your matrix is ductile and soft, and you are applying a load. And precipitates are on the grain boundaries. What will happen? What happens to the concentration of stress? It will be uniform or it will be different? It will be different. So concentration of stress will be somewhere high, somewhere less. Where it will be high? In grain boundaries means where exactly? Where there is precipitate. Why? Precipitate will not deform. You are deforming the materials. Precipitates are hard and brittle. It will not deform. But your matrix want to deform. Right? So what will happen? A stress concentration will generate along the precipitates. And the concentration of stress is high. That means what will happen? Precipitate will come out. It will detach from the matrix. A hole will form. A void will form. And once a void will form, again your concentration of stress will be higher around the void. So a crack will initiate. And that will easily propagate along the grain boundaries. You understand my point? So that is another problem. I told you an example. Why our nails, the iron nails or steel nails are pointed. Because you are striking from one end, the stress concentration should be uniform everywhere, but it is concentrating at the tip. Right? Because it is sharp, that's why. If it will be flat, then concentration of stress will be uniform. You cannot make it into the wall. Right? You can make it into the wall because it is pointed. Concentration of stress is maximum at the point. That's why it is going into the material, into the wall easily. Right? So you understood? So uniform distribution of precipitate is very important. Right? But advantage of this one is you are adding foreign particles, they will automatically uniformly distributed everywhere. And precipitate do not always form along the grain boundary. Sometimes it forms on the dislocations also. Where there will be dislocation, it will form on the dislocation. What may be the reason? Can you tell me? Same answer. Energy. It is the extra half plane of atom. On that precipitate is forming because extra half plane of atom is having higher energy compared to the matrix. So in other way I can say precipitates preferentially forms on the high energy regions. One is along the grain boundaries or on the defects. Where there will be defect, there is high energy always. You have to remember. But it is also very interesting if there is a extra half plane of atom, that is dislocation, and precipitate is forming on the dislocation. It will be good or bad? Just imagine. It will be good because it will pin the dislocations. Dislocation cannot move easily. Precipitate will pin it. Dislocation want to move, but precipitate is pinning, so it cannot move easily. Right? That is also very interesting. I can show you. I have images with me. I was working on those precipitation strengthening steel for my MTech project. Anyways, so this is you understand my point now. You can write what is the difference between precipitation strengthening and dispersion strengthening. Right? In dispersion strengthening, we are intentionally adding some foreign oxides into our material. But in precipitation strengthening, already in the matrix we have these materials, these solutes which come out due to heat treatment, solutionizing and edge hardening. You understand my point? And precipitate basically preferentially form along the grain boundaries on the dislocations, but dispersoid forms everywhere. That is it. And another difference is in precipitation strengthening, the precipitate may become coarser, become bigger with time and temperature, but dispersoid will not grow. They will not grow, or they will not get soluble also. Precipitate may get soluble, but they will not become soluble. So these are the differences. So if there is a question, if application temperature is very high, then go for dispersion strengthening instead of precipitation strengthening. That will solve your problem. There is a concept you can write. There is a very good concept that is called dr by dt is equal to, is proportional, you can write, but it is proportional to d, proportional to gamma, proportional to xc, but inversely proportional to, inversely proportional to d square. Can anybody guess dr by dt? R means what? Radius of the particles or radius of the precipitate, and t means with respect to time. Very good. So that means this dr by dt is nothing but rate of particle coarsening. Rate of particle, that means with time how the particle become coarsened, slowly or very fast, like that, dr by dt. So dr by dt is a concept which will tell about the rate of particle coarsening. Rate means we divided by time always. Fine. So this rate of particle coarsening is directly proportional to d, directly proportional to gamma, directly proportional to xc, but inversely proportional to d square. So it is clearly showing inversely proportional means if your precipitate will be small, what will happen to the dr by dt? If the precipitate will be bigger, what will happen to dr by dt? Can you tell me? Inversely proportional. So if you start with very small precipitate, so dr by dt will be high, very good. But if you start with some intermediate precipitate or bigger, then dr by dt will be slow. So that means finer is the precipitate, rate of particle coarsening will be more. But coarser will be the precipitate, rate of particle coarsening will be less. You understand my point now? If you start a material with a small precipitate, it will become coarser. And that is by Austral-Dreifning, I have shown you. Mechanism of Austral-Dreifning. Right? That is one part. But now what is D? D is the diffusivity. Diffusivity. That means if diffusivity of atom is more, what will happen to the dr by dt? It will be more. Right? If atoms will move faster from one location to another location, particle become more coarser easily. So higher is the diffusivity, higher is the rate of particle coarsening. Fine. And gamma. What is gamma? This gamma is interfacial energy. Interfacial energy. If interfacial energy will be high, again the rate of particle portioning will be high. Interfacial energy means you understand what is the interface now. What is the interface? In a precipitation strengthening material, what is the interface? Interface is the portion between precipitate and the matrix. You understood now? Precipitate is a second phase, matrix is the primary phase, and there is an interface in between the portion. This is the precipitate. So interface will be, this is the interface. You cannot see that. That is behind this precipitate. Right? This is the matrix and this is your precipitate, for example. So where they are touching, where the precipitate is touching the matrix, that is the interface. So if interfacial energy will be high, precipitation portion will be also high, because system always want less energy. Right? But energy is high. So obviously if you want to decrease the energy, how it can decrease if precipitate become coarser and coarser? So interfacial energy will be decreased, because interfacial energy is related to also surface area. Higher is the surface area, higher is the surface energy. Lower is the surface area, lower is the surface energy. Right? Smaller precipitate means more surface area, obviously. Yes or no? Okay, so Xc, this is important now. This part is important. Xc is the equilibrium solubility. Xc is the equilibrium solubility. Can you tell me anything about this? What is the meaning of equilibrium solubility?
Maximum solubility.
If your precipitate is getting soluble, so they will become coarser. If equilibrium solubility is high, so they will become soluble, right? So particle will become coarser. In Oxford ripening, first step is the smaller precipitate gets soluble, then it gets reprecipitate on the bigger precipitate. If they will become soluble, they will easily reprecipitate on the bigger precipitate, right? You understand my point? So if equilibrium solubility will be high, dr by dt will be also high, right? So this equation is related to also dispersion strengthening. In dispersion strengthening, which one is important? Can you tell me? Someone is saying this one, very good. Because your oxide will be not soluble in the matrix. Xc is 0. If Xc will be 0, dr by dt will also become 0. So there will be no rate of particle portioning. Particle will not become coarser with time. So dispersoid never grows with time. Why? Because of Xc is equal to 0. Oxides will not become soluble in the matrix, because matrix is metallic material. Oxide is something different. How it will become soluble? You understand my point? So Xc for dispersoid is 0. Equilibrium solubility for dispersoid are 0. So that's why dr by dt is also 0 in simple way. So that is why we are getting maximum strengthening in case of dispersion strengthening at high temperature. So there is a steel called ODS. You can write ODS steel. You tell me. O for what? Oxides, very good. D for dispersion. S for strengthening. ODS. Oxide dispersion strengthening steel. Oxide dispersion strengthening. That means in those steels there will be oxides. Oxides of yttria or your titanium dioxide or maybe your alumina. And the application of these steels are nuclear power plants. You can write. The application of these steels are nuclear power plants. Nuclear power plant means you understand how high temperature available will be there, right? Nuclear fission will be there. Due to fission, lot of energy will come out. So we cannot use any precipitation strengthening material over there, or we cannot use any soft materials. So we have to use a steel. We stand very high temperature without failure. So ODS steel can be used. Research are going on. Still research are going on this ODS steel. Okay, fine. You understood my point now? This is okay. So now, okay, this is fine, and now, Okay, this is also done. And those strengthening will be due to interaction between dislocation and dispersals. And how interaction will happen? Same as precipitates. Because precipitates are also particles, dispersoid are also particles. Same your going will be there, same shear will be there. You understand my point? Mechanism is same, right? But here interesting point is they do not grow. But in precipitate they grow with time and temperature. Okay? Anyways. There is a steel called HSLA, you remember. High strength, low alloy. What it means? High strength, low alloy.
Carbon
Amount of alloying element will be low, very low, but that will provide very high strength. What is the benefit of getting this HSLA, high strength, low alloy? If you are adding very low alloying element, but instead you are getting very high strength, right? So selection of alloying element is important here, right? It is okay. And what is the advantage of adding low alloying element? The density will be what? Become low. Suppose you want to manufacture a car, and you are using a steel which contains a lot of alloying elements and in large concentrations. So what will happen? The density will become more, the fuel efficiency will go down, it will consume more petrol or diesel. For less kilometer, it will consume more petrol or diesel. Fuel efficiency will go down. Your vehicle become heavy, right? But if you are using this HSLA, high strength, low alloy, amount of alloying addition is very low. So density will be also low, comparatively low. Fuel efficiency will become high, right? So the question is, in this kind of steel, which alloying elements are present? The alloying elements are present are, you can add titanium, you can add vanadium, you can add niobium. So these are very interesting. Niobium, vanadium, titanium. And if you carefully look, these alloying elements have high affinity to carbon. So now you think of it, what will happen? It will form precipitates, carbides, vanadium carbides, niobium carbides, titanium carbides. These alloying elements also have high affinity to nitrogen also. So what will happen? They will form nitrates. And you remember, carbides, nitrates are precipitates. So they will provide you strength, right? But condition is what? They are added in a very small amount, very small, 0.2, 0.1 like that. Out of 100 weight percent, you are adding only 0.1, 0.2% of titanium, niobium, vanadium, but it will give you very high strength. Why? Because of formation of this carbides, nitrides, and carbonitrates also. Sometimes carbonitrates. Both carbon and nitrogen will be there, right? But application temperature is room temperature, because you are making a vehicle out of that. Vehicle will run at room temperature conditions, but that will provide you very high strength. So this concept is understood. HSLA, high strength, low alloy. Alloying element is very low in the steel, so that will give you a benefit. Your fuel efficiency will be very high because the car, the truck, bus, they will be of lightweight. But that will provide you very high strength. Suppose I am adding chromium. Chromium may not give you such high strength. It can provide you corrosion resistance property, but it may not give you high strength. Right? Suppose I am adding some aluminium. It may not provide you very high strength. Right? Suppose I am adding some nickel. It may not provide you high strength because they will form solid solutions. But these are forming precipitates. Right? So in HSLA, the strengthening mechanism is precipitation strengthening. If somebody will ask, give an example of precipitation strengthening steel, you can give this HSLA, right? Which is used for making automobiles, automatic components. Right? And give an example of dispersion strengthening, ODS, simple, oxide dispersion strengthening steel. Application area is nuclear power plants. Okay. This HSLA is also called microalloy steel. So you understood why it is called microalloy, because the amount of alloying element is minimum, very low. Sometimes if you add ppm level of niobium and vanadium into the steel, the strength will be very high. ppm level, you can understand, parts per million. Parts per million. In million, only one part will be there, for example. But it will give you very high strength. Why? Because of formation of carbides, nitrates and carbonitrates by this vanadium and niobium. And another interesting point about vanadium and niobium is what? They form precipitates, and those precipitates are also forming in the grain, not always along the grain boundaries. They form precipitate inside the grains, and those precipitates are also very small size. So small size precipitate is there, and your precipitate is everywhere. So it is good, I told. It is not preferentially along the grain boundaries, it is everywhere. And also they are of small size. So strength will be more. That is also an interesting point about niobium and vanadium. And also you can write one important line. Niobium and vanadium prevent grain coarsening at elevated temperature. Niobium and vanadium also prevent grain coarsening at elevated temperature. Just imagine how it will be. Suppose you have a material and you have, it prevents grain coarsening at elevated temperature. Elevated temperature is high temperature. So this is the situation. High temperature. If you take the steel to high temperature, this may be the situation. Initial grain size is this. Due to high temperature, grain becomes bigger. Only 3 grains. No more number of grains. Right? But this vanadium and niobium, presence of vanadium and niobium in the steel prevent this. Just imagine why.
Because they are in grains.
They are in grains or they are in grain boundaries. Actually, so those precipitates are everywhere, I told. Inside the grain, along the grain boundaries also. So if this niobium carbides, vanadium carbides form along the grain boundary, what will happen? They will pin the grain boundaries. Grain boundary will not become bigger. You understand my point? So they basically, like, they will form like precipitate forms on the dislocation. It is pinning the dislocation. So dislocation cannot move. Similarly, it also pin the grain boundaries. If they will form along the grain boundaries, they also pin. So if grain boundary will be pinning, it cannot grow with time. Can it grow? It cannot grow. So that is pinning effect called. That is the pinning of vanadium and niobium precipitates. That is called pinning effect. Pinning. P-I-N-N-I-N-G. Pinning. Like a pin. So that's why this vanadium and niobium prevents grain coarsening. You understood the concept? Right? And the interesting point about vanadium and niobium carbides are they need very high temperature to get soluble in the matrix. You can write. Vanadium, niobium carbides or nitrides needs very high temperature to get soluble into the matrix. It is also interesting. Suppose your application temperature is 700 degrees centigrade. Right. But vanadium carbide needs suppose like 1050 degrees centigrade to get soluble. And your niobium carbide needs suppose 1150 degrees centigrade to get soluble. So you can use this steel at 700 degrees centigrade because they will not become soluble. But for example, you have a precipitate cementite. You already remember in steel we have cementite, Fe3C. But Fe3C will get soluble at 750 degrees centigrade. Right? You understood the difference? If you have a precipitate of Fe3C, that will get soluble at 750 and your application temperature is 750. So can Fe3C will give you strengthening? No, because it is getting soluble in the matrix. But in that condition, vanadium carbides, niobium carbides will be very beneficial. because niobium carbide will get soluble unless until you go to 1150 degrees centigrade, and vanadium carbide will not become soluble unless until you go to 1050 degrees centigrade. So you understood my point. So that's why these carbides are very interesting, vanadium carbide and niobium carbides. So and these steels are also called microalloyed steel. Microalloyed. Microalloyed steel means the concentration of alloying element is very low, but you are getting precipitation strength. That is the answer.